everybody, this is Tina with Rehatch Designs. Hope you're doing well. I am here to do a little video using napkins. I have been on this using my napkins kick lately, and recently I did a video where I took a napkin or several napkins and I put them on parchment paper, and I'm showing you here what it looks like after it's done. And what I found out, I was trying to make rice paper. It did not come off the parchment paper very well. And if you watch that video, I'll put it in the description box. I did it another way that worked really well, but this way didn't work all that well for making rice paper. But what it did do is it made this really, really strong paper. And I thought, well, what can I do with this? Because I really didn't want to tear it off of there because half the time it ripped anyway because it was stuck to it so well. So I thought, well, I'm going to try and make something out of it because they're very sturdy. I'm just using parchment paper, and mine happens to be brown. You can use white. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, parchment paper with the napkin and the glue, I found made this really, really sturdy but yet lightweight kind of crunchy material. So all I'm going to do here is I am taking apart my napkins. I took off the back layer. There's usually always 3 layers, and now I'm taking off the very last layer, and I just usually use tape to start getting it apart, and then I pull it apart. So I'm trying to get it all the way down to the last the last part of the napkin. And so I'm just going to show you what I did to make this paper, and I really think that this stuff is a great idea. You could make journal covers out of it. You could cut it up and use it for pockets, make envelopes. But anyway, it's very, very sturdy. This napkin happens to be a really big size, but I mean, you can use any size, it doesn't matter. So anyway, I'm taking my parchment paper, and as I said, this happens to be brown, but you can use white, it doesn't matter. I just like how the brown looks on the inside. Anyway, I have the shiny side up. And now what I'm going to do is I have some glue. You just use any kind of white glue that you have. I am using tacky glue, and it's really thick. So it works the same as the cheap Elmer's glue or the dollar store glue. But I just have to add a little bit more water because I wanted a little bit more, I say the consistency of syrup, but probably actually a little bit looser than that. Maybe the consistency of warm syrup is what you really want. But anyway, I'm trying to get it out of the bottle because we're at the bottom of the bottle. And I would normally use Elmer's glue. I also use clear glue. I did that on the rice paper. It was a little bit more translucent. But on this, it doesn't really matter if it's translucent or not because the brown paper is gonna stay on the back. So the baking paper. My big thing for doing this way on the parchment paper is it really makes a very sturdy piece of material. It's almost as sturdy as like a vinyl or something. And I've got one of them in my hand right now, if you can hear them. And it's just a great way to almost make like napkin material. So I really have found a lot of things that I think I could use this for. So anyway, I've got it kind of mixed up a little bit, and now what I'm going to do is I am going to take my vintage photo. This is my re-inker. And I usually put a drop or two, and some of it's spilled, so I've got it on my parchment paper, which is okay because I can just kind of move it around on there. It doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. So my goal here is I am going to paint on my parchment paper a space bigger than my napkin, which is, it's a really big napkin, so it's going to take a little bit of work. So I'm just basically just going to go and have it all over because I want my napkin to stick to it really well, and I don't want to miss any spots if I can help it. I'm going to do the best I can to get most of it pretty good. And I'm just going all over it. And the only reason I put the vintage photo in there is I like it to have a little bit of a vintage tint to it. I'm looking for, that kind of older look. And putting a little bit of the vintage photo in there kind of darkens it up. You could use paint, you could, like a drop of paint, you could use a little bit of coffee, you could, instead of water, how I mixed it, you could use coffee or whatever. But it's just easy to use the drop of vintage photo because I have it handy, but you could, anything you want to darken it up, but you still want it the same consistency. You don't want it too thick because it'll clump up on you, and you don't want it too thick because it will also kind of tear your paper. And of course you don't want it too watery because that'll also kind of just degrade your paper so much that it'll tear. So it's just kind of a right in between kind of thing. And I missed some spots there, so I'm going back. I didn't do it wide enough, so they said it's a really big napkin. So then all I'm going to do is I am going to just cover the entire thing with the glue. That's it. And if you have a little spot that tears or something, just try and put it back together and, put some glue over it. Because in the end, you probably won't notice it if it's just a small little tear, because we're going to do some things to this later and it will probably not show at all or not be noticeable. So anyway, I make sure I saturate it pretty good. I want it to penetrate all the way through. And honestly, this stuff, it sticks really, really well to the parchment paper. And that's why this did not work all that well, for the making the rice paper. So basically you do the same thing for rice paper, but it's supposed to peel off of the parchment paper when you're done, which this will, but it's very hard. I ended up using pieces of plastic, like, a plastic tablecloth or plastic packaging, and it worked way better. So, in fact, it just came right off of it. So, anyway, that's what got me to this, is when I looked at those pieces that I didn't want to peel off, I went, what can I do with those? And I came up with the idea of making these pouches, and I'm calling them Boho pouches, because I am making some journals, and I wanted to make, a pretty good size envelope, something reasonably sturdy. And I'm telling you, these turn out really sturdy. So I could see a lot of uses. And of course, they don't have to be boho. It can be any kind of thing you want, any kind of napkin you want, any kind of theme you want. So in fact, I used the white part of one of these big napkins, and I did that, and I just actually made the stain a little darker, and I did it with that, and now I've got this kind of crunchy, leathery looking thing, and I'm going to do a few more things to it, and I'll show you that at some point when I finish with it. But I think it's going to work fantastic for what I'm going to use it for, and I will show you that in the future. But this material, once you put these two together, is great. Now, I don't know, for the rice paper thing, if you use wax paper, if it would work the same. But wax paper kind of really, I don't know. It has the same kind of coating on it, on, both sides, not just one side. So I don't know. I have a feeling that it probably doesn't work as well is the just, plain old plastic packaging. I had pieces that were 12 by 12 and some were smaller, and I just used those and they worked great. So anyway, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to get to the next part. I kind of put that somewhere where it'll dry. I leave it overnight. I don't mess with it. I don't use my heat gun or anything. So I just let it sit out overnight, and then we get to the very next part. So I'm going to get rid of my little media mat. So this is what it looks like. This is a different piece of napkin, but very similar. And so this is what it looks like after it dries on the parchment paper. And I think it looks really cool because it's got, it's translucent, but yet it's got all those little wrinkles in it. And you can kind of see the brown through it. Like I said, you could definitely do this on white too if you want to. I just wanted that kind of vintage look. So you could definitely use white parchment paper to do this too. Now you may be able to use it on brown paper, but I think what would happen is the glue would seep through, and then you would have to end up putting it on top of something plastic too. Whereas on the parchment paper, it doesn't seep all the way through. So then after you dry it, you can just, lay it somewhere, after you glue it, you can just lay it somewhere to dry, and the glue isn't going to seep all the way through. So I am just trimming all the way around it first, and this is like a first trim. And then what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to just try and figure out how big I want to make it. If you look at the back isn't super shiny. It's kind of a dull brown, and I really love it. That's what I like about this. But that napkin is very much attached to that. So it's kind of a perfect piece of material to work with. And that's kind of how I look at it. I think it makes it kind of a really neat material. So I'm just kind of folding it, deciding how I want my pouch to be. And I really am just trying to make a pouch and decorate it so that I can have a place to put some extra things that I'm going to have with these journals. So, but I want it to be a good size. So it can handle a lot of things. I didn't want like just a little envelope. And I thought that these napkins look somewhat boho. So I thought I'd go ahead and do that. So now all I'm going to do is I am going to kind of cut off the edges a little bit and get them straight. I'm going to make it as straight as I can first. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this and get it somewhat situated the way I want it. Now what I do is I figure out where I want the top, and I like a little bit of a lip on top so that you're not, it's not even with the fold line. So there'll be a little bit of a gap. So you see a little gap between the top of the bottom and then where I'm folding the top. That's just so that you can easily put your hand in there after. And I am going to sew the sides and glue them. So, that should help as far as keeping it together. It shouldn't really be a problem. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not doing anything really fancy with this. So, just trying to figure out the size. And I'm going to try and make it right around 11 inches. And it's like 5.5, 6 inches wide. And that's a good size. So if you did it that size, you could put a journal in it. You could, I want it because I want to be able to fold some papers in half and things like that and put them in there, and some big tags and all that kind of stuff. So that's the goal. So I'm just mainly putting this in here to straighten it out, and then I'm going to kind of measure and get it to the width and length that I want. Mainly right now I'm doing the width, and I'm wanting it to be right around 11 inches, so I'm measuring it on my mat at 11 inches, and then I'm going to mark it, and then that way I can just cut it after I mark it. So yeah, if you have a stash of napkins and you want to make some really unique journal covers and things like that, you know, or if you don't have a stash of napkins, maybe you can do a swap with some people, or if you see some that are inexpensive. This is a great way to use them because this turns out to be very sturdy. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to round off the corners. I could make it very rounded, but I don't want to do that. I'm just going to make it pretty simple. I'm going to make this little whole thing kind of an easy little exercise. The fancy part of it's going to be with the trim and things like that. Not so much with the construction. So now all I'm going to do is find my little quarter rounder, and then I am going to go ahead and do the corners. And it's just really to kind of round them a little bit. So just to, I don't know, it looks a little more finished. And my corner rounder is not working all that good because this, even though it's very sturdy, it's very lightweight, and usually it doesn't like doing anything that lightweight, so I should have put some thicker paper under there, but I think it'll work anyway. So that looks pretty good to me, although later you're really not going to notice that I even did that, because by the time I put the trim and everything on there, you won't even really notice. But anyway, I am rounding the corners a little bit just to kind of jazz it up a little. And pretty much doing it at the tops of the flap and the bottom of the envelope, not doing it anywhere else because that's not going to be seen. So anyway, I just kind of went in with my scissors and cleaned it up and made it a little better corner. And now what I'm going to do is just kind of decide what I'm going to do next as far as decorating. And I have this pink, and it's completely wrong. Originally I was going to put that on there, but I don't think it goes with it at all. So trying to decide what my next step wants to be here, and what trim I want to use on it. I have a lot of different trims, so this can go in a multitude of different directions, but this is kind of how I wanted to do it. So I have this trim, and it's in my stash of boho things. I got it at Hobby Lobby when it was on clearance. It's definitely colorful, so I think I'm definitely going to use it. I haven't used it yet. I've had it for a while, so I think I'm going to just bite the bullet and use it. And I have trying to figure out what other trim I want to use with it. I kind of auditioned some different ones. And I also have some filigree that I bought that I think I want to use with the brad. So I don't know. I'll have to kind of play with it a little bit and just see what looks good. But just trying to decide what I want to put on there. I don't have that much gold filigree. I've got a lot of the bronze. So the antique bronze, I usually get that if I, and then I just kind of change the colors up a little bit when I use them. So we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and put the trim on, because I think now the one that I do the next time, I actually sewed around it before I put the trim on, but I like to glue it and sew later, just to give it extra stability. But I'm using the 3-in-1 glue, and honestly, you don't have to do anything else to that. You don't have to sew it. It's going to stick. And since we're gluing it to the actual napkin, it will stick pretty good. So we are going to go ahead and put that piece there. And the way I usually put my trims on is that I put them on, from the roll or from the larger piece and then cut them. I don't usually measure them out and then put them on, because inevitably I usually cut it too short and I have this piece that's kind of wasted. So I try and just leave it all together, and then, most of the time I'll just glue it on and then cut it. Unless it's kind of hard for me to handle, then I'll go ahead and cut off a piece. But I figured out that way I have a lot less waste when I do that. So I'm going to just do it that way. And I always dip the ends in the glued, because it keeps it from unraveling, like you just saw me do. And then when I cut this, I'll go ahead and make sure I put glue on the end and do it on, because if you don't do that, usually these things will start to unravel on the ends. Okay, so now that I've done that, I am going to make sure it's on really good. And I'm just kind of trimming the little end because it's perfectly square. And remember, we rounded the corners, so now it's going to be rounded. I don't know if you can tell, but that's just a little detail. So after I do that, I'm just going to make sure that it's tacked down really well. And now I'm trying to figure out which piece of filigree I want to put on there. And it's, kind of hard. It's hard to make up your mind. And I just kind of put different pieces out there and kind of just audition them. And I think ultimately I decide on this piece because it's bigger and I think it ends up looking better. So and the one thing that I wanted to do too is add a magnet for a closure. And if I use this metal, then the magnet will stick to it. So that can then be my closure. So in any case, I am going to just kind of look through my stuff and make a decision. And I think I decide I'm going to use that. And that piece, I think what I'm going to do is try and put a little bit of this Inca Gold on there and make it a little bit lighter color, a little gold color. And this has like it's a metallic rub, so it'll kind of brighten up that whole thing. And yet it'll still have a vintage look behind it too. So if we do that, we'll get a really cool, kind of a lighter gold finish, and then you'll have the darker in the background. And that's one reason why I tend to buy the antique bronze, knowing that if I want to make it a little bit lighter or even silver, I just use this stuff to do it. And I'm just going through and trying to make sure I get enough of this little metal flower. I think that looks really good. I wanted it to match the gold a little bit more that was in the trim. The antique brass didn't really do that. So, but I like the antique brass because then it gives it a vintage look in the background. So, you know. So the next thing I got to do then is I got to figure out if I want these other pieces on, and I kind of decide not. But you'll see later on I change my mind again. So now I've got to figure out where I'm going to put that with the brad that I did find that I liked. And I had just gone through a stash of stuff and found this. And I'm putting a tiny bit of gold around it. It's silver, but I just wanted to put a little bit of gold just to kind of smooth it in. So anyway, I just do that, and I'm going to go ahead and put my brad in. And I'm going to be using a magnet on the inside of the pocket. The reason I'm going to do that is that the metal will attach to it. So anyway, all I'm going to do is I am just going to put this brad through the middle and figure out where it's going to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and have to cover where the brad goes through. And I also need to make a hole through there so that I can put that on there. Going to try and figure out exactly where the middle is too. Going to use my Tim Holtz ruler to help me do that. That's one of the best things I like about it. It works really well for finding the middle of things very easily. I mean, you can do it with a regular ruler, don't get me wrong. But if you look, what I'm doing is I've got the 0 where the middle is, and then I am on the equal number on each side. So then that tells me where the middle is. And for that purpose alone, I love this ruler. So anyway, so I'm going to mark where it is so I can kind of get it where I think I need it to be. So we're going to do that. And then I decide I'm going to go ahead and put my hole through and use my my crocodile to do it. Although you could just punch a hole through with your awl or anything pointy to put the brad through. You didn't have to use that. But I had it sitting there, so I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and use it. So now I'm going to go ahead and put it through. and do my brad on the other end. And then we're going to cover up that brad because I don't want it to show. And I make sure I flatten it really good. It's on there really good. So it's starting to look like something now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and ink the envelope a little bit. But then I decide, well, okay, let me think of something to hide the back of the brad. And so I end up just putting some sari silk on there because I don't want that brad to show, but I don't want to just put one little thing right there. You could put a sticker, you can put washi tape, you can do anything you want to do. I just happen to have a lot of the sari silk, so I thought it would look good, kind of a surprise on the inside of the envelope. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that. And it doesn't lay really flat, so I have to kind of, work with it. And I don't care if it's totally flat, but that's all right. This particular sari silk has a lot of fibers to it too. And I like how that looks, but sometimes it's a pain, especially when you're gluing. But that's what I'm going to use. And anyway, I'm going to make sure I get that all the way down and get it on there good, and it's going to cover those brads. And then I'm going to trim the edges. And for the most part, that completes the journal except for putting it together. And then I'm going to do something to the sides. And I end up doing it, and then later I'm just like, well, it probably didn't make that much of a difference. So you'll see. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and try and get my magnet on there. And the most important thing when you're putting a magnet on is to make sure you get it on the right side that it needs to be on. Because there's a positive and a negative side. And you want to make sure that you get it on there so that it will actually work. So I kind of position my magnet. Figure out where I need to put it, and it's going to be on the inside. And then after I position where I need it, I've just got some tape, and I'm going to tape it down, and it's just some masking tape. And then after that, I'm going to put some washi on top of it, but I'm going to use some glue to make sure that the washi is going to stay down. And in hindsight, I should have just used like a little small piece, but I went ahead and put it all the way across the back. This is going to be the inside of the envelope, and really nobody's going to see it. So you do want to cover the magnet because you don't want things to catch on it. And yeah, you can use washi. You can just left the tape or whatever you want to do. But nobody's really going to see it. Well, they can see it when they look inside the envelope, but it's not something that's going to be seen from the outside. So I probably could have saved some washi and just put some right over the magnet and done a little better. But I've had this washi for a while and I haven't used it, so anyway, it's not peeling really well, so it's really good stuff to use for a boho look, and I haven't, as I said, really even bothered using it. So anyway, I'm going to make sure I put glue down so that I can know that it's going to stay over the magnet and it's not going to catch on anything. When I go to put things in the little pouch, I don't want it to catch on where the magnet is. So after I trim up the washi, we're going to move on to the next step. And then what I'm going to do with that is I don't know. I end up doing it on this one, but I don't do it on another one because I don't know that it was worth the effort. I am going to add some little side sari silk just to reinforce it. But honestly, I just don't think that's necessary. So you can just glue the sides and it works just fine. You can also take some sari silk later and sew it on the on the corners or whatever. But it really is super sturdy, and after you sew it and backstitch it a little bit, it's not going anywhere. So now I'm taking my Inca Gold and I'm going to go all the way around my envelope and just get some gold all the way around. And I really love this stuff. It's always really fun to use, and it can just really make your whatever you're making kind of cohesive. I'm putting the gold all the way around because I want it to kind of, go with the trim that's on the envelope. So I'm just trying to make it look like it's been around and it's been special and it's got gold all around it. So anyway, I'm just going to do that wherever I want it around the journal. And I really like the idea that it's got all these little wrinkles and ridges, because when you go later on to add some gold to it, other than the edges, the gold is going to get hung up on all those little, wrinkles and things like that. And I think that really looks cool when you're done. And it's a fun way to do napkins. So, okay, so now all I'm doing is just making sure I put the gold all the way around, and I put another piece of paper so I can get the edges. And I'm going in a little bit on the edges. So pretty soon I should be done getting the gold on here, and then I'll be able to sew it together. And I'm gonna glue it and sew it, so it's very sturdy in the end. But honestly, on the other ones that I did, I ended up just sewing it shut because it held just fine. And the closest thing I could say is like maybe, those tablecloths that they're vinyl, but yet they have that kind of felt or something on it. That's kind of what this reminds me of. It's got, something that, don't get me wrong, my dog likes something that my dog likes, but none of this is really rocket science, so it's pretty easy. Alright, so now I'm just doing the edges, where it's folded. I'm going to go all the way around with that. And this Inca Gold is just one color, and there's all kinds of paste like this, and I don't know, I like how it just takes things up a notch. And I'm going to go over all the little bumps and stuff too. But first I'm going to go ahead and just kind of figure out what my next step's going to be. And I think what I'm going to do is probably just put my gold up on the ridges that are kind of high. That way I'm not just trying to paint gold, but I'm putting a little bit in the journal by putting it on the cover like that. And I'm doing all this before I sew the pouch, and the main reason is because I think it's easier that way. But I also did another one where I did it after, and it wasn't really that hard to do it that way. So kind of whatever your preference is. This stuff dries pretty quick, and once it dries, it's permanent, so it works pretty good. I know some people have had trouble with their Inca Gold and keeping it moist and everything, but I just spritz some water in it every time I get done using it, and I use some press and seal, and it seems to be working for me to do that. So anyway, I think I'm done with that. Now all I'm going to do is put it on the road, and we're going to get going again and get to where we're actually making something. This is just kind of all the prep work. So now that we've done all that, I am going to figure out if I'm going to put any other decorations on it, if I'm going to sew it, or what I'm going to do. And I kind of decided that what I think I want to do is I want to add something to the side pockets just to kind of reinforce them. And originally I was going to try and make a gusset type thing, but then I thought, no, I'll just do it this way and see how this works out. Because I think the pocket's plenty big enough to hold what I need it to hold. So now I'm just trying to attach a piece of sari that I put on the inside of where the pocket is, and I'm just kind of guesstimating like halfway, and I'm going to put some glue halfway through and fold it over and then attach the other half. You'll see. So yeah, that's the piece of sari that I have. Now those I bought somewhere, and they're all kind of ironed and everything, and I use those also, but in a kind of a different way. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my sari for that piece that is part of the pocket, and I'm going to do two pieces similar size, knowing that I probably have to cut them a little or trim them. And I'm just going to go ahead and do, halfway, and then try and put the glue down on the other side. So you can sew this down on one side and then glue the other side, and that's ultimately what I end up doing. But you can glue both, and it'll last. But I actually sewed all my pockets on the sides, just so that they were sturdier. And I found that my sewing machine had no problem sewing through the not wax paper, butcher paper or whatever. So it just went right through it. So anyway, I'm going to put this halfway through, and that is just going to be a way for me to reinforce this. Yeah, so now I'm going to fold it in half, and that way I'll have half on one side and then half on the other side when I fold it. So we're going to do that. And like I said, this entire step where I put this on the side, I did 3 other ones, and I didn't do that. I originally did it because I thought it would help reinforce the sides, but then after I played with these for a while, I realized they're super strong. You really don't have to do that. So I think these would stay together. So now I'm going to put glue on the other side, because I decided that it's probably easier to close it going that way, or at least for me, because maybe I'm right-handed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I've already put glue on the top, but that's okay because it's going to get glued there anyway, so it'll be all right. So we're going to do that. So yep, here we go, halfway. And I'm just trying to match the fold line to the edge there as best I can. If you really wanted to do this, you could iron it in half and then you would have a perfect line. It would probably make it easier. But as I said, I ended up not even doing this on the other one. So then I have glue on the other side and I put it in between. And I end up, that corner I end up trimming, that rounded corner. And I did that really just to reinforce the sides, just because I wanted some material there. I tend to use sari silk a lot for stuff like that on joints of journals and things. But I really did feel later that this parchment paper, I said butcher paper before, the parchment paper and the napkin together with the glue actually make a really heavy-duty material. Anyway, there's my pouch. That's all I really did to it, is I sewed the two edges, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to show you some other ones, and thank you for watching, and try it sometime because this stuff really works great. Makes a fantastic, very sturdy pouch. So anyway, so my mishap turned into something really good. So you guys take care, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.